Hi, and welcome to another special edition of Marketing Insights podcast. This episode is going to examine ecosystems, as in advertising ecosystems. I'm Shanita Akintonde, professor, author, career coach, and marketing shero, and I am thrilled, as in elephant ear elated, to have with me today a very special guest. And I was talking to him a little bit before we started the podcast, joking, if you will, that we have known each other for a very long time. And I said, I'm pulling out the big guns. So whether you're a longtime listener or a new tuner inner, you have the honor and privilege of hearing a individual who I have a lot of respect for, and I think that he has a lot that he can offer to this particular context. I'll tell you a little bit about him, and then I'm going to allow him to elaborate on anything that I may be missing. His name is Sean Brewster, and Sean is a seasoned, as in sprinkle, sprinkle, leader in the client leadership role, with over 2 decades, count them, 2 decades of experience on some of the world's largest and most recognized brands. The list is so long, y'all. I can't go through all of them, but I will share a few of them with you. He's at an agency called BBDO. I am not going to tell you what the last names of each of those letters represents. Sean may be able to do it, but I shared with him in the past that I had the opportunity of working at BBDO as well earlier in my advertising career for a little petite dynamo named Tonise Paul was the CEO at the time. But back to Sean. He served as an integrated agency lead across various clients. Here's a snippet of that. Bayer, Wrigley, Quaker, Provision, Bud Light, SC Johnson, and Brown's-Forman, to name a few. He also has a variety of experiences in multiple disciplines, including media, PR, social, e-com, and experiential. He's now at Omnicom Productions, and he recently got a promotion. Yay! I'm so happy about that. Congratulations to you, Sean, where he is working on large, complex global clients who help them to design, build, and manage new solutions to their content and production ecosystems, which is why, hello, we're talking about advertising ecosystems today. Lastly, and most importantly, in my opinion, outside of work, he is a proud husband and father of 3 sons, and he credits them with keeping him balanced. He's rooted in faith, family, and personal growth. Let's, yay, give a marketing insight shout out to Sean. Sean, thank you so much. And before we go into the specific, i.e., scripted questions, I do want to ask you something personal, if you don't
Mhm.
mind, and you
No.
elaborate on it as you see comfortable. But we're talking about ecosystems today, but sometimes what I think is missing from the conversation is the ecosystem that exists outside of your work life. And
Mm.
in other words, your family work balance and how and I was so excited to read your tying in your family, particularly your sons, to this whole dynamic. Can you just share a little bit about how your familial ecosystem, as it were, may guide or govern how you work and how you lead in the advertising space?
That's awesome. First, thank you for having me. This is awesome. I love this, and I love to talk about it, so I'm happy to. I think when it comes to my family and how I look at them helping me kind of, I don't even like the word balance necessarily. I think it's more like rhythm of work and life. What I try to do is there are just moments where, of course, in any industry, but particularly in the advertising industry, where things get crazy. You're doing, putting in a lot of hours, a lot of time, a lot of energy into a particular project, campaign, what have you. So what they do is really keep me grounded in always checking in and seeing like, when's the last time I touched the ball that I'm juggling of family life? When's the last time I touched that ball? And if it's been, too long, and I think maybe we each have what that is, but if it's been too long for me, which is like, weeks, not like I don't see my family or anything like that, but literally like I'm sitting down, I'm engaged with them, I'm paying attention, I'm able to have conversations with my sons and my wife. If it's been even more than a week, I kind of figure out how do I make sure, whether during the week, even though work might be happening, or make sure the next weekend that's coming up that we're doing something together as a family. So that's kind of how they kind of keep me in check, that I don't go too far on just always, always, always working. So
Excellent. I shared with you, Sean, as well before we started this conversation that this is my eighth season hosting this podcast series. And one of the things that I'm really going to be conscious of this lap around the court, if you will, is that I want to let listeners understand and see a little bit behind the curtain. We talk a lot about the tenets needed to be successful in branding and what it takes to make a great advertising campaign or whatever the topic of the particular podcast is. But I also think it's important for to share how things look outside of the work we create and what
Mhm.
makes us better at actually doing the work. And so that leads me to the first question that is back on script, if you were. What is something about your journey, your journey in this whole world of advertising that might surprise some people?
Um, I would say probably like how I got into this. I actually started off like wanting to be a creative. That just stemmed from my time at college, and I was making a flyer for my fraternity, Iota Phi Theta, just to kind of
Yes, I
shout
know
them
you're
out.
my Greek brother. I remember
Yeah, yeah, just
that.
shout that out
Yes.
there. I made a flyer for one of our socials and I felt good making it, and then I saw people respond to it in a really positive way. So that kind of started me on the track of advertising in general, but I was gung ho. I was like, I'm gonna be a creative. I was not good at, at being a creative. I was not good at being a creative, but had some creative sensibilities, and I think that kind of spurred me on to see a little bit more of at the time account management and how like account kind of touches each hat when it comes to advertising. So creative, strategy, production, all of it. So that's probably maybe one of the more interesting things of how I got in. And then I think majority of my time in the industry has been in account management. The last probably 5 years is when I kind of made a transition to content and production specifically. So that kind of was a refresh. It kind of revitalized me when it came to advertising and with all the tech, with all the tools, with all the content needs. Obviously, the landscape has shifted a lot since when I first started, and that's kind of how I transitioned into the role I'm in now.
Yes, that's so funny because I also started with desires to be a copywriter, creative. But I'm just going to slightly make an addendum to what you said a minute ago. I think the whole landscape of advertising is creative. I think it's just
Mhm.
what lends itself more to the
What
quote
you bring
unquote
to it, yeah,
creatives. But we all have a sense of creativity
for
in that
sure.
vein. So I would just make that little tweak. But
Agree,
can
agree.
we take a step back and
Mhm.
describe to the listeners, some of whom may not know when we use this terminology, advertising ecosystem. What is that?
Okay, so I mean, really, it's kind of it's connected to like what we say like the supply chain content. Like it's basically from beginning to end. How do we start and create what's
Hmm.
needed, and then all the way through actually executing it, actually producing it, all the way through to actually delivering that content. So there's many different partners, and that's probably part of why things are so complex nowadays. There's many different partners, many different tools. So it's like the ecosystem of all those things coming together for a client to help them deliver on their marketing goals of the content that they need. So, for example, there are things like from an operations standpoint, the tools that are used for that, like Adobe Workfront, you might hear of some of that. Um, and I'm sure you're talking about this stuff nowadays too, when you're actually producing the content with things like Gen AI and what
Hmm.
tools are going into that. Um, from their delivery of content and even connecting the content directly to media through like DCO. So there's just a lot of different tools, and then also, particularly for clients now, a lot of different partners. It's probably more common now than it definitely was when I started. When I first got into advertising, it was like one big agency. They did everything. 360 campaigns meant like print, radio, and a TV spot. And now, obviously, that world is so much different. It's social media, it's PR, it's everything combined.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, actually, clients are working with actually multiple partners now. So it's like, very few are the days of just one AOR, and now it's like multiple partners that they're working with. So it's kind of helping navigate all of those partners, all of those tools, but also boils down to the same thing. They have business objectives, marketing objectives to deliver on that. And then how are we helping deliver on those marketing objectives through the content that we create?
Yeah, great. And just for those who don't know, AOR means agency of
Oh,
record. You
sorry.
know, we
Yes. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
drop
Yeah.
these terms and it's like your
We do.
own
It's true.
vocabulary, but
It's true.
and that's important. But so because Sean, you have had the opportunity to see content production through various phases of your long
Mhm.
career, what would you say has been the most and you just alluded to this, but what has changed the most? So you did just
Mhm.
say some of it is not just one agency of record that just did everything from a
Mhm.
360-degree model. But are there any other things that you can point out that you feel has changed the most? And what, like folks who are starting out their careers maybe might just want to grab onto to look at being ready to be a part of, if possible, for them to do so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination. It's definitely like multiple partners for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The media landscape, of course, has like exploded and continues to explode in terms of not just media placements, but just from a digital standpoint, everything that's connected to that. I probably one of the and what I love about the industry too is that so much continues to change. I kind of view it as like I'm just going to be a lifelong learner. I just had a meeting this past week where they were talking about how AI has disrupted traditional search, right?
Yeah,
You know, I don't know about you, but like nowadays, when I if I do search on Google, which is rare, I
right?
just look at the Gen AI summary, and I'm usually done.
Yes,
But a lot of the things now are I'm in chat, I'm in Gemini, and that's where I'm doing my searches. And I was just at a meeting this week where we were talking about the transition from SEO even to GEO, which is basically like how are we making sure that our websites are built in a way that the AI bots can, make sure that they're pulling from them all that good stuff. So just to say simply to say that like media landscape and everything that's going on with media has also changed. And then again, AI is like the big thing. Every client is looking and trying to understand it. Some are at the forefront of it in terms of like let's try it, let's explore it, let's figure it out of how we can utilize it, and not just from a content standpoint in terms of creating content, but also from like productivity and operations and things like that, like just literally how the agency is structured. um so those are like the huge things where like it's just like constant change. And AI, of course, again, probably being the most recent, where it's a game changer, where everybody's talking about it and trying to figure it out. So,
yeah, wow. I was just telling my husband recently, I just said to him, you know what? AI chat GPT is like my new best friend. When I have a
mhm,
question or I'm looking for something, I used to pick up the phone maybe and call somebody or
mhm.
call him, or now I'm just like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
asking
it's true.
questions and it responds in seconds, which
It's
is
true.
better
It's
than I can
true.
say sometimes about my husband. Okay. So, can we talk
I
about
love it.
efficiency and
Yep.
productivity? So, what clients or what are clients saying to you, or what are you
Mhm.
seeing in terms of how you strike that balance, as it were?
Yeah, so definitely efficiency is a big big thing. Clients and agencies themselves trying to figure that
Mm,
out, right? And how do we utilize AI to do that? It's everything to me to a degree is a spectrum. So for the efficiency spectrum, again, I think this maybe probably ties into what I was saying too, which is like on one end, just like simple like operations, like how is our workflow stood up and how does it actually help deliver the content in a seamless way? One of the things that I've come to figure out or see a lot is how we operate is such a contributor to good work, not even from a creative standpoint, but setting up a system that allows the creativity to do what it should do and not worry about anything else, reducing friction and stuff like that, just meaning like Does it take hours for me to pull together a deck or, what have you? Just things like that. So how do we look at efficient ways to drive the operation? So some of the things that we're looking at and dealing with are, again, it's funny that I say no longer are the days, but I remember when I first got into advertising and it was like call reports. It was like doing research to kind of figure out insights, whatever other example you have. And nowadays, it's like literally we're using like, our internal AI models to like do the research for us, which, like you said, comes back in seconds, comes back in minutes versus days. So, like,
Right.
we're saving time on those types of things there to help put more time and energy into some of the other stages of the work. So that's from an operation standpoint, that's been really big. And then, of course, the actual creating of the content. So, again, a lot of agencies have their own proprietary tools. But if you're just thinking chat, you're thinking a Google Gemini, what have you, in terms of copywriting, in terms of um, uh, just simple things too, like generative fill and things like that. Like again, the world of media now, like everything is a different size, and you need to make sure that that piece of content can translate to multiple sizes and using AI to help with that. So like those in essence would be okay, I get a piece of content, here's what I need to do with it, and then the person goes off, producer, studio, etc., and then they work on it and then deliver it back. That might take, depending on what it is, that might take days to get that done or weeks, depending on what the complexity of the project, all of that. Now, again, starting to use these tools, it's taking, from weeks to days, from days to minutes in some instances, depending on what it is. So again, I think a big part of that is saving time, of course, which time is money, so saving money there. And then a lot of it too is again the efficiency of like being able to put energy and effort where it belongs. So if I'm saving time on some of the administrative tasks, I can put more time and energy into thinking a little bit bigger on what's the client's problem to solve, how do I attack it versus me spending time doing something else like recapping this meeting report or something like that. So for anyone getting in, obviously I think that's going to be big is learning kind of these new tools and the skill sets on how to make these tools kind of sing for you, and being able to think big. They should be helping us in that respect to think bigger about our clients' problems to solve. So,
Right. Yes, I remember back because we go back, as we said earlier, when you and I were talking before we started the broadcast, a long way. I used to bring you into my classes and have you
mhm.
speak with students, and just always was appreciative of your ability to have your finger on the pulse of what was needed for them. Hopefully, they were listening to make it and be successful in this field. Let me switch gears a little bit and just
Mhm.
ask you, what are the clients? Just between us, what are
Mhm.
clients asking you for the most right now? What are they looking at, you know, your agency BBDO in particular because of your specific unique niche or just in general? What are clients these days really looking
Um,
for?
we're hearing a lot of similarities. Definitely, particularly with more global clients because global just comes with that sheer nature of just more complexity around it. Trying to balance things like scale, efficiency, but also still being relevant when it comes to the content, right? So oftentimes there's maybe seen like a trade-off, right? If I'm going big and I'm going massive with the amount of content that I need to produce for all of my global markets, the intent might be that I have to kind of come down to the lowest common denominator, right? Because I can't produce everything for every market with a different spin. Like you just can't do that.
Mhm.
Everybody has a budget, right? Regardless, even
They
personally, you got a
do?
budget, right?
Oh,
Right, right. Everybody's got a budget. I know my budget. I can do certain things. I can't do other things. I got to make decisions. So a lot of that is having to make tough decisions between, how do I go at scale, but also try to drive content that feels relevant, that is relevant for my local markets. So that's one of kind of the big things that they come to us for. And there's ways, again, nowadays utilizing some of these tools, there's ways to definitely deliver on that. And then on the other side of it too is again, that probably would have been the thing that I would have never really thought about when I first got into advertising, and it's
Mhm.
just become the thing now, which is how we are wired together through partnerships with agencies, through internally, how are we wired, and how our operations kind of push the ball forward. Um, those would kind of be the things that clients are even saying, "Hey, help us with how our operations are set up." Do we look at a model that is how do we look at AI, but also maybe utilizing offshore resources? And how do we look at the tools that we use across the board to help us intake requests and then even just literally communicate and review on the content that's needed through those requests? And then, of course, like through final delivery of the types of assets that they need, editable files, final files, like all of that. So like those are kind of probably the two big things. It's like help us how we operate, help us on our model overall when it comes to working with our partners and creating the content that we're looking for.
Oh, right. Well, that is so beautifully stated. I could just listen to you talk about this all day, but I know you don't have all day because you are being
Yeah.
gracious with your time. We're going to move into what I'll call our lightning round. I just
Yes,
have a
ma'am.
few final questions for you. I think what we can tell listeners to take away from what you're saying, at least what I've heard you say, is that this idea of advertising ecosystems looks at like the people, the
Mhm.
platforms, the
Process
technologies, the
and the process.
processes
Yep.
that all interweave to produce that final and manage that final advertising product.
Hmm.
Okay, so lightning round, are you
Give
ready?
it to me.
So
Yep. Give it
you
to me.
you you manage a team. You again are part of a global
Mhm.
team, and so how would you describe your leadership style?
Oh, my leadership style, I would say like I'm a servant leader. Like I have my thoughts and vision and I communicate that to the team. But also I want to make sure that I'm kind of serving them as well. So what are their, passions? What are their goals? What do they think on how to deliver growth for our clients? How to optimize the work that we are currently doing? So I try to if I can, I try to do a lot of like pulling from them too. And honestly, again, I feel like I'm a lifelong learner just because I've been in this 20 years. Everything constantly changes. Some people come with great new ideas. So I want to make sure that I'm serving my team in that respect. And then of course just serving the agency in that respect.
Excellent. Now, what is one of or the, because it's sort of like I say one of because it's like asking which one is your favorite son, but
Yeah,
what is a
yeah.
favorite campaign that you worked on? The best or favorite or a favorite, either way.
Um, a favorite would definitely be it was Bud Light. We did Super Bowl. And it'll probably be my favorite just because of what it was. I had never done a Super Bowl spot before then. And it was just fantastic. It was just like the pace that we moved at was crazy. I wouldn't want to necessarily do that again, but the pace that we moved at was like ridiculous. And of course, like shooting and meeting celebrities and all of that. Yeah, that was just probably the most memorable thing. I mean, when I did it, I was like, oh, this probably won't happen again. Happen again. So
Yeah.
that would probably be the most favorite. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So what's one final nugget or takeaway you'd like to leave with listeners about this particular Marketing Insights podcast on advertising ecosystems? It doesn't have to be about advertising ecosystems per se. It can just be in
yeah.
general something you'd like to have as your final note.
I would say for folks just to, at least I know when I was trying to get into advertising, I never thought about the production side overall. I think it's definitely become more of an avenue in terms of just the content that's needed. Every client is basically like, I will not need less content than I do today. Like I will continue to need more and more content. So I would say definitely make sure that you're considering that as an avenue if you're looking to get into advertising. I would also say with that, obviously tools and tech, I'm sure like that's everybody's hearing about that now too. but the principles remain the same. So learn the principles when it comes to how do you think about strategy? How do you think about client relationship and just being able to talk to a client and lead a client? How do you think about what makes good content? Like those things, I would say don't overlook the principles for just kind of like what's hot and what's the most buzzworthy thing right now, which is AI. Because again, like, AI is showing us that things constantly change, but the principles are things that you can take with you and apply.
Yes. Well, Sean, thank you so much for taking the time again to
Thank
talk to us
you.
today and dropping all these beautiful nuggets. If you don't mind sharing, how do people get in touch with you?
Uh, that's hilarious. I'm actually doing a social media fast right now, so don't go to social
Okay, well
media.
then we'll go back. We'll skip past that. So the next part is you can get in touch with me.
They can
You can
email me though.
they
You
can
have my
email
email.
you.
They can,
I can
yeah,
share that. I'll share
yeah,
that
you
in the
can,
notes
yeah,
of this podcast.
yeah,
But you can get in touch with me. So find me on or find this podcast. Let me start there with wherever you find your favorite podcasts, and that's Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, Audible, etc. In addition, reach out to me on LinkedIn at Professor Shanita Akintonde or on Twitter at underscore Shanita Speaks. Thank you again, Sean. We are going to
Thank
share
you.
these notes and I'll give the follow-up information. This has been wonderful. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another special edition of Marketing Insights, this one entitled Advertising Ecosystems.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks,
Bye bye.
Sean.